Welcome everybody to the NPC Compliance webinar brought to you by the Department of Healthcare Access and Information, otherwise known as HCAI. You may download the handout for today's presentation in the Go To panel under the Handouts section. We're scheduled to be here for 2 hours today, and we will have a short 5-minute break at approximately 11 o'clock. We have a lot of information to cover, so we will not have time for question and answer session during the webinar, but if you have any questions during the presentation, please email them to seismiccomplianceunit@hcai.ca.gov. That's seismiccomplianceunit@hcai.ca.gov. If you experience any transmission difficulties during the presentation, please log out and log back in using the login information that was sent to you by GoTo when you registered for the presentation. Today's presenter is Ali Sumer. He is the supervisor of the Seismic Compliance Unit. Once again, thank you all for joining us today, and I'll now hand the presentation over to Ali.
Thank you, Kelly. Good morning. So we have a lot to cover today. I'd like to first start with thanking all the members who put together this presentation. I'm the presenter, but truly this was done by many people. I'd like to thank Kelly Zimmer, Kamal Kalsi, Patrick Rogers, Alireza Asghari, Hussein Darama, Simrit Palma, Shane Gross, Jake Stepp, Roy Lobo, and many others. All right, with that, let me go to the next slide. So for those of you who are following the webinar series, we are on the third item. Back in February, if you haven't seen it, please go to Small and Rural Hospital Relief Program, Seismic Grant. The slides and the recorded webinar is on our website. And the one previous, before this presentation, Seismic Compliance Plan, which applies to all facilities and delays beyond the 2030 deadline, which applies to AB 869 applicants. Today's NPC compliance, it applies to all. Next week, Kamal actually will give this presentation, Water Rationing Plan, which is NPC 5 related. And last but not the least, we're going to cover the SPC compliance in a couple weeks. All right, I'll talk about the outline so that you will have an idea about what I'm going to cover today. I'll give some background on the NPC, but I highly recommend to go back to the past webinar, which we did 2 years ago, which went into a lot of details of NPC 3, 4, 4D, and 5. So this webinar is actually adding on top of it. So there's a lot of new materials, not new requirements. It's just more information about the NPC. I'll go through the current inventory. I'll talk about the NPC deadlines and how to report those deadlines, compliance with those deadlines. And we'll introduce the summary pages that we have been commenting on a lot lately. And the NPC 5. NPC 5, I am not going to cover here. So if you are here for NPC 5 only, that will be only very little thing. So I recommend you to attend the next webinar. I'll cover lots of frequently asked questions. And all the questions that you're gonna see, we publish them on our website. We continue to publish them. So this is kind of a go-to place. So this link on the handout should be an active link. So when you click on it, it should take you there. The last item will be A13 NPC upgrade construction guide. So this is new, well, new-ish. So it's like almost 3 months since we published this. I'll go over this in more detail. Okay, so just again, starting with the Seismic Safety Act. This is what basically is the background of everything. So we are trying to prepare the hospitals and designing and constructing to resist, in so far as practical, the forces generated by earthquakes, gravity, and winds. So the NPC aspect truly focuses on the most critical non-structural systems and prioritize timeframes for upgrading those systems that represent the greatest risk of failure during an earthquake. When we talk about NPC, we talk about functionality, but functionality really has three aspects. One is structural, which we call beams, columns, shear walls, slabs, foundation, the skeleton of the building. The rating that we use for that is SPC, or structural performance category. Non-structural, so other things in the building, which are partition, ceiling, cladding, equipment, pipes, furnishing, contents, elevators, stairs, many things, we call that non-structural. And the rating for that non-structural is NPC. And of course, functionality, staff makes everything happen. So what we are trying to do here is to give doctors and nurses all the tools that they need so that they do their miracle every day. So the non-structural, the importance of non-structural systems, there's nothing new, but again, in the latest earthquake in Turkey, it showed a renewed, again, emphasis on the non-structural systems that should be tied, braced, and thought about throughout the building to provide healthcare services after an event. So the rating system that I mentioned on the previous slide about NPC, we have 6 categories. So I'm not going to go through this table, but basically 1 is the worst, 5 is the best, and there are steps in between, and we're going to go through more towards NPC 4D and 4 today. And if you want to know more about NPC 3, again, I would go back to the seminar 2 years ago so that you will get more information and the handouts. Excuse me. I showed this sketch pretty much on all NPC presentations. Again, this is a super simplified example. So let's say this is your hospital building with lots of functions in it. Admin space, med-surg beds, radiology, so on and so forth. So all of these things do work because of utilities, electric, gas, water, oxygen, so on and so forth. So they are all tied together. So there is a network of systems within the building, between buildings, and outside. So as a starting point to this building, our starting point is NPC1, meaning that either nothing is braced or nothing was looked at or evaluated. If certain evacuation systems generally are looked at, which is pretty much the scope of NPC2, bulk oxygen, fire alarm panel, some emergency generator anchorage, exit signs, some communication, very little, the building and the facility gets NPC2 rating. NPC3 or NPC4D level 1 looks at some critical care areas such as ICU or radiology, which we call NPC3 areas. Within those boundaries, within the walls of the area, things are braced. So you see that pipe, there will be a bunch of brace here, bunch of brace here, but right outside of it, there's no brace required. So in an earthquake, obviously, this utility line, if it breaks here, it won't function here. So NPC3 or NPC4D level 1 does not target functionality in those spaces. It basically targets to tie everything around the patients so that it doesn't fall on them, so that they can basically leave that space safely. So NPC level 4D level 2 and 3, which I will talk about, it looks more about the functionality through bracing all the way to the source. NPC 4 is actually a holistic all building systems and utilities. So most of our newer buildings get NPC 4, or the NPC to upgrade to 4 looks at all the braces and equipment, or utilities and equipment, and bracing all those so that it gets NPC 4. NPC 5 is not about anchorage. NPC 5 basically sits on top of the umbrella of all NPCs. So in order to get NPC 5, the building has to be NPC 4D or NPC 4, and to have water, fuel, and sewer tank to accommodate 72 hours of operation. So that's kind of in a nutshell of our rating system. As I mentioned, in the last year, while we received few thousand evaluation reports, we looked at them, we reviewed them all, commented, sent it back. So we are caught up. We may have maybe 17 or 18 back check pretty steadily, but if you haven't received a comment from us, talk to us, because you should have received all the evaluation report comments by now. One common thing about that one is when we send the comments out, if the contact is no longer there in the facility, there might be some break in the communication. So, but you can always log into your project and see where the comments are and when that was made. So I'll focus on 4D and 4 mostly on this presentation. So for those of you who are, again, not quite familiar with 4D, the requirements are set in California Administrative Code, and you can see the details, the requirements, and all that. So as I mentioned, NPC 4D is basically NPC 3 with some levels in it, levels 1 through 3, 1, 2, 3, and it's all about bracing and anchorage. So on top of that, since the whole building is not braced, in order to achieve the intended operational requirement, there's an operational plan that is attached that comes with the NPC 4D report. So this operational plan is the key part of the strategy of bracing. So without it, we cannot review the NPC 4D evaluation. So the operational plan is all about continuous operation. How can we achieve facility-wide continuous operation by looking at things more detailed? So the operational plan should not be just prepared by design professional. It should be owner approved, and the owners should be truly heavily involved in the strategy of operational plan. So it looks at where to brace it so that you get that functionality, and maybe where not to brace it so that you have some alternative manners for that functionality, which I will come to that one. Again, we are looking at keeping the facility operational. The code also says that, okay, when you are submitting this, make sure that you include executive summary, narrative, management of utilities, etc., etc. The operational plan portion, we publish it on our website. Couple suggestions on the operational plans, since we have seen quite a bit of those. Please do not include sensitive information in the operational plan. We publish those, so do not give your staff phone numbers on your operational plans. So please clean those up. Okay, so it is acceptable to provide 2 PDF files. One talks about the comprehensive for review. The other one is more reduced for publication on our website. So it's okay to not show the shut-off valve locations in the public version. for security reasons, so that we understand the some other concerns. So just let us know. Okay, NPC 4D level 1. Quickly, if I go through that, if you have a general acute care building, let me put my laser pointer back up. There are NPC 3 areas, and you have a CUP building, central utility plant, and other buildings that is on the way. Bracing these NPC 3 areas for level 1 is the minimum requirement. Now, level 2 and 3 are optional, depending on how you want to strategize your facility operation. So some buildings may end up with level 2 or 3, but it's a strategy. One thing that we keep seeing is the design professionals focusing on just the general acute care building that they are contracted to, but NPC 3 and 4D also requires the source equipment to be braced. So there needs to be some survey of where the utilities, where the sources are coming from, and most of the time it's just a central utility plant somewhere. So some panels and some mechanical rooms, electrical rooms, so those are all need to be braced. Level 2 is about from source to the NPC 3 areas, and these lines are all braced. So basically what we are trying to make sure is that these areas will function reasonably after an earthquake. Now, the other blue areas may not quite function because the utility lines from source to here is not braced. So when it comes to elevators, level 2, my God, level 2 requires, again, it's kicking me out. Interesting. Never had this before. But we'll manage. Okay, here we go. Okay, so level 2, when it comes to elevator, you need to select certain elevators to upgrade. Again, operational plan is required. Now, this is something that we use quite a bit. Something what we call level 1 plus. So it's something in between level 1 and level 2. So just think of two NPC 3 areas right here, and let's say you are bracing from source to that area, so you are basically ensuring functionality here. But this one, you have an alternative somewhere else. So you say, okay, so I don't want to spend resources, money to this one because I have a good alternative in another building. So I'm not going to brace the utilities from here to the source. So which means that the critical care areas or the NPC 3 areas are not all braced. So your rating is still level 1, but your operational plan gets a whole lot easier. So there's this surgical approach that you can do to optimize what you can upgrade. And again, there's no such thing in the code that says plus, it's just a strategy between 1 and 2. Okay, level 3 is basically level 2 with more areas that you choose. So the rules are the same, so there's really nothing new there. NPC 4 is, like I mentioned, it is bracing pretty much everything, architectural, mechanical, electrical equipment, and so on and so forth. One common questions that we got is NPC 3 area exceptions. So those exceptions don't apply to NPC 4s for upgrade. And most of the time, there are a lot of past projects in the building that you can take credit for. So just think of like you have a map, you have a bunch of areas that are already explored and upgraded. So it's just a matter of finding gaps between those past projects and focus on those. But please do make sure that those projects that were started in the past were closed in compliance. If the status of those projects are closed without compliance, you cannot take credit, or you need, if you want to know how much was finished in those projects, you need to go a little more document route to see what happened in the past. For NPC4, the nice thing is operational plan is not required, because if you brace everything in the building, the expectation is reasonably there will be function. But again, no one is guaranteeing 100% everything will work. It's just this is a reasonable assumption. Okay, now people say, is it really bracing everything in the building? Well, there are some exceptions in NPC4, and I'll just highlight a couple things. When something is attached to an architectural item, such as walls, people say, okay, should I upgrade all the light frame walls? The exception here is when a 250 pounds is attached to light frame walls, and if a single stud gets 250, then you need to upgrade that stud. So, and 250 per single stud is a very big piece of equipment attached to the wall. So this doesn't happen frequently. So, so the focus of upgrading the light frame walls is pretty minimal. And then there are some other things like, hey, if I put a 3,000 pound equipment, how much evaluation, how much more should I go? And it's pretty actually flexible on how much you should go. So it's everything, but not really everything. Okay, now with the rating systems that I all mentioned, where are we on the building inventory across California? So this is our latest pie chart, which is about a couple of weeks old. The SPC, the structural performance, so we have 655 SPC2 buildings and 38 SPC1 buildings. So these need to be resolved before 2030. These SPC1s are being resolved as we speak. 3, 4, 4D, 5, these are actually good beyond 2030. So these are the structural, the good structural buildings. When it comes to non-structural, the picture is different. So we have NPC 5, 244. This is growing actually pretty rapidly with the evaluations and upgrades that are being happening. NPC 4 is the pie slice is getting much bigger lately. 4D is probably accelerating the most, and you're gonna see a whole lot more movement on getting the 4Ds. 3, it's still, we have 246 of them, and almost half of our inventory is NPC2. So this is the pie that pie slice that requires anchorage or more careful consideration. Luckily, we do not have NPC1 anymore. Where can you find this information? So the best place to go is this link, this website. So you will find not only SPC, NPC, but lots of other details about your facility and buildings. So we add new tabs every, I don't know, every year, but some tabs have been there for decades or a decade or two. So facility info, building list, seismic info. So these are the most used tabs for NPC for the building operational plan, and later the newest edition is building compliance plan, which I will touch on this presentation a little bit. But please go to the previous presentation to learn more about the building compliance plan. Okay, so if you click on the building list seismic information, this is what you see. I want to focus on one column, but in this table, again, you're going to see the building details, the name, the year, the code, the height, and the rating. But we keep updating, well, many things, but this NPC status really talks to what we are trying to achieve with this presentation. This gives the status of the NPC upgrade. Now you may say, okay, what do these things mean? Like there's some text, so I basically broke it down. So let's take a look at options here. So if the NPC status shows not submitted, basically it's pretty straightforward. The evaluation, we have not received the evaluation report. So if you think that this is a mistake on our website, please do reach out to us. So we will fix our mistake. But if it is not submitted, it shows not submitted. Awaiting review means that the report was submitted or resubmitted for back check and it's queued for review. If it says in review, which means that it got triaged in so that it has the right components and documents in it, now it's in review. If it says review completed, it means that we sent the comments out. So please respond to the comments. If you see proposed retrofit acceptable, then it means that we received the evaluation and we accepted the scope. We sent a letter saying that we are accepting the proposed retrofit. And the next step is basically now putting together the construction documentation and build it. So if you see intent to remove general acute care, GAC, then it means that we received a letter, formal letter from the facility saying that they are intending not to continue general acute care services in this building after 2030. So we put this building in a different category, which I will talk about that later. You may say, okay, that's great to look at facility by facility, but I don't want to click 100 times. So is there a list that I can download everything? Yes, there is. And this is the link. And for all 400 plus facilities, NPC, SPC status, and more are in this link. So if you go to our website, Seismic Compliance and Safety, you're going to see a link that shows everything. So 3,000 something building status is there. It's a PDF, and you may say, well, PDF is I need Excel. Well, the way that we created this PDF from Excel, so if you save this PDF as Excel file, it will convert to Excel file very cleanly. So it's by design. So anyways, you can sort, you can do all kinds of statistics if you want to. All right, so now we know the rules, now we know the inventory, what are the deadlines? So I want to start with NPC 3 compliance deadlines. I know that this is a 4D and 4 more towards that, but we still have a little NPC 3 compliance deadline issue. We have 2 seismic design categories, seismic design category D and F. F is very high seismic area, D is high seismic area. There is a deadline, there was a deadline that says all the NPC 1s and 2s need to be 3 by this date if you are seismic design category F. So out of 43 NPC 2 buildings, we have 40 NPC 2 buildings with this deadline. Now, about 24 of those, they are done. They are in the process of basically getting the paperwork resolved. So my target is 16 buildings in 9 facilities. That needs action immediately. So if you haven't heard from us, that means that you are not in that list. If you did, you know. Okay, the other deadlines. For the NPC 4, 4D, and 5, the NPC compliance deadlines have been set for a long time ago. But recently, in 2025 code, with the addition of AB 869 and the California Administrative Code revisions, there were like 2 little additions in between. One, well, the first one, let me start with that. January 1st, 2024, that's the submittal of non-structural evaluation deadline for all hospitals. So there's no change there. For January 1st, 2025, if you are seeking extension under the AB 869, that was the deadline for non-structural evaluation report. With the 2025 California Administrative Code actually becoming effective in a few days, this is doing this again, that kicking me out. Let me go back again. So by March or by January 1st, 2026, all facilities need to submit a seismic compliance plan. So again, please take a look at the previous webinar. By March 1st, 2026, all hospitals, whether you are seeking delay or not, all hospitals need to submit construction documents by March 1st, 2026 for NPC 4, 4D, and 5. By March 1st, 2028, that's the deadline to obtain a building permit. And for the ones that are not AB 869, finishing date is January 1st, 2030. And whatever the extension that the AB 869 facilities get, that will be their deadline to finish the construction. So you may say, well, why January went to March? Because most people, we are a deadline-driven industry. Most people submit at the last day or the day before. So January 1st is generally not a good time because everyone is on vacation. So when things are needed, bringing the design professional from a Christmas vacation is not fun. Okay. Reporting NPC compliance to HCAI. So those are the deadlines, but how can we keep track and report these deadlines are met or not met? So we will do all of those in our new automated seismic compliance plan. So again, I highly recommend to look at the previous webinar. The way that we will be asking everybody is, please do put the NPC milestones in the seismic compliance plan for 4D and 5, and your time of submitting the construction documents, your time of getting permit and completing. We're going to be asking you to put all that in the seismic compliance plan. So how do you do it? Basically, you use our guide. This is an ESP e-services portal user guide, section 21. Basically, this walks you through step by step on how to log in, access, use the menus. So this is more like a software user guide. And we publish pin 80, so you can look at the background behind it. But for this webinar, I'm gonna focus on how to input the NPC compliance deadlines into this seismic compliance plan. For SPC related deadlines, it will be the April 2nd webinar, so please attend to that. But for NPC, this is how you do it. There are two tables in the seismic compliance plan. One talks about what you're gonna do for each building. Like for example, this cancer research, are you gonna demolish the building, replace the services, are you gonna do SPC, NPC, retrofit, and all that. So it's a pretty straightforward drop down. It basically asks, what's the big plan? The second table is more about the details of each building. Again, a predetermined drop down. So I would basically focus on the bottom part of the drop down, which talks about more about the NPCs. So we pre-populated these so that you can basically select those and put a date. And when you complete it, you can put completed or in progress or not started. And if we have comments, you're gonna see the comments right next to each item. So if we say, well, this hasn't been submitted, so on and so forth. So it's very straightforward. So, and if you have any questions, let us know. So that's all it is on the seismic compliance plan for NPC 445 reporting. Again, I basically noted down how we're gonna do this. Then there's a little nuance on 4, 4D, and 5. 4, 4D, each building has its own plan. So some upgrade to 4D, some upgrade to 4, some demolish it. So it's building by building. When it comes to NPC 5, it's more a campus-wide approach. So if you are putting a big sewer tank outside, that will make everything NPC 5 after every building is done with 4 or 4D. So repeating the NPC 5 project submittal on each building will just take up a lot of time, and it's just unnecessary repetition. So we are basically saying that please put it in one of the simple building that you're not going to put too many milestones. It can be, again, kick me out. We'll have a IT talk. There we go. Okay. So you can choose a simple building like canopies and shed, and you can put the NPC 5 dates there. And when you do that, the system will recognize that, oh, there's an entry of NPC 5, so that we will assume that this is for the entire facility, which generally is. Okay, so now I'm gonna start going into the details of NPC 4 and 4D. I'll talk about some nuances, some frequently asked questions. So we'll basically touch on, again, a lot of nuances here. One thing that I would start with is the big picture of the building. So the older the building it gets, the more scope of work that needs to happen. So we have categories. So the best place to start is to figure out, okay, how old is the building? What was the permit year of the building? What was the construction year of the building? So start with the age. So, and when you start with the age, the very important thing to identify is who was the permitting agency. Was it local, like city, jurisdiction, local jurisdiction, or was it OSA, which is the agency right, or kind of OSHPD, and then we split from OSA and we became OSHPD. Was it under the OSA jurisdiction, or was it under our jurisdiction? So when, again, if it was under our jurisdiction, depending on the year, the scope gets very minimal or nothing, and then as you go towards local, the scope gets more. So prior to 1973, pretty much we don't allow self-declaration, and self-declaration, I'll come to that in the later one. Equipment and inventory is required. Distribution system required. Fire sprinkler required. Calculations and testing may be required. So look at the exceptions. If it is after 1973, all the way to 1982, 82 is when the OSHPD became OSHPD. So this is the OSA era. So again, we don't allow self-declaration. Basically, this is a letter from the facility saying that everything is done. So I'll come to that in the next line, but we don't allow that. And the rest is very similar to local, but calculations and testing is limited. When it comes to OSHPD jurisdiction, all the way to 1994, almost 1996, the only scope is about fire sprinklers. So we still require a self-declaration, which is 3 statements. One, everything is done under OSHPD permit. No unpermitted work happened. And this kicked me out again. And fire sprinklers are per 1994 edition. So again, this era, the fire sprinklers weren't quite designed for what we know today. So there is some upgrade needed in this era. If you are after 1994 and the fire sprinklers are 1994 NFPA 13 designed, then you have no scope of upgrade in 4 and 4D. You still have NPC 5 to do, but again, this is not about bracing. So take a look at the footnotes for this. But again, it's very important to start with the age. The reports, once the evaluation is done, it's important to summarize what's the scope of work. Like, what are we trying to upgrade? So the engineer knows, but it's sometimes very difficult to track how what's truly needed. So the code says, a narrative and a summary table is required, but after seeing many evaluation reports, we started commenting saying that you gotta have a summary table that everyone can follow. So we basically came up with a template. So we are strongly recommending to include a template, summary template at the first page. Again, we are here today, we won't be here tomorrow. Your engineer may not be here tomorrow. So to keep track of what has been done, the summary tables are super important. So we came up with a summary template. So you can click on this link and download it if you choose to. So I'll just go a little. I'll explain this table a little bit because it's important. So this is the building that you are looking at. It's a general acute care building, and there's a building right next to it, which we call pass-through building, and then this is a source building, essentially this is a plant or wherever the source equipment is. So for NPC 4, which is basically the whole building, the entire building, we look at, okay, tell us if things are compliant above ceiling, tell us if equipment is compliant below ceiling, elevators, and flex utility connection. So these are kind of our 4 categories to summarize. So under this, there's like subcategories, and tell us, in few words, Is retrofit required? Is just give us some tidbits. And for the MEP equipment, again, tell us the big picture. If you go much, if you try to break this whole building down into many components, then you are defeating the purpose. Just tell the owner and us that, okay, there's nothing that needs to be done. This is compliant. It's good. So our focus will be hung equipment, for example. So we can look at all the details in the report later on. It's just we want to know the big ticket items in this summary table. And same for source equipment, if what's the status of that one. NPC for the level 1 summary table is a little different than NPC 4. So again, some similar items, but the now you're not talking about the entire building in terms of bracing. You are now talking about areas within the building and the source equipment within wherever those source equipment are. So again, give us the details on what the plan is, so that when you go, for example, when you go to this building in the future for hung equipment, if you open a project and if you finish the retrofit, then you can say, you can come back and say, yep, this item is done under this project. So now it becomes compliant. Well, okay, you still have those 2 items that we need to see projects for. So it kind of starts basically addressing things on a more high level. NPC for the level 2 and 3 summary table, again, is a little different than NPC 1. Again, you can download the templates here. So I want to just quickly talk about the setup here. So you have the source building, you have a pass-through building, you have seismic joints, and you have NPC 3 areas, additional areas, elevators. So these are basically surveyed. So these are utilities to be braced. So, okay, how are we gonna prepare a summary table for that? Again, I'm gonna start with the bottom line. The source equipment, tell us which building it is in. Tell us where the utilities will be passing through, because those are the buildings that you will have projects. And utilities in passing, again, another passing through building, and this is your main building. If you identify these, then you can actually start checking these things off as you make progress. The reason that we are emphasizing in pass-through buildings is NPC projects come with many little multiple projects. So it's very easy to keep or lose track of the focus. So when you have many little TI projects that are touching many different parts of the area, then you may start actually well, did I do this pass-through building or not? So anyways, this is something helpful. If you have better suggestions, we are open to look at it. All we are trying to do is make the scope and tracking easier. Okay, what about the operational plan summary table? Again, here's the link for the template. We'd like this to go to the front of the operational plan. So we kind of divided into the code described service categories: basic clinical services, support services, supplemental services, other services. So we just listed functions, mostly aligns with the AB 1882 reporting. So just tell us in the building that you are looking at, which services are in that building, and what's the plan for those functions. Like you can go functional, reduced functional, or you are basically strategizing to provide this sterile processing in another, maybe a newer tower that you built recently. So then we'll say, okay, then all we need is the NPC3 area bracing, not source to source to the area. So again, this kind of gives us a big picture on how you're approaching your functionality. Okay, how am I doing with time? I'm gonna go through few more slides because we lost a few minutes during the technical difficulty. So I'm gonna just go through those. Operational plan. Again, does it have to be included in the evaluation report? The answer is yes. Can we submit it later? The answer is no. Now, right after that, we get a follow-up question. Okay, I'm gonna give you the operational plan, but can I submit it later with the revisions? The answer is yes, you can submit it because again, the things change, the strategies change. So it's, this is driving me crazy when it is kicking me out. Okay, going back. So you can resubmit the plan for approval. So again, your plans may change, it's okay. Just let us know. If it is a minor change, obviously you don't have to. You can just accumulate the changes and then submit it when it makes sense. But that's what we recommend. Okay, this is a big question. The next two are the big questions. All right, let me first explain the question. So we have a facility with lots of buildings, and I am focusing on this building, and I have NPC3 areas in this building. Now, the NPC3 area, let's say I have an ICU and I have a radiology, let's say. Well, for the radiology, I have a plan because this building has radiology department, maybe not the same size, but some alternative that is in this building. So basically we say, okay, radiology is acceptable to have the alternate location so that you don't have to you don't have to brace from source to this area. But what about ICU? So ICU, the question says this is exclusive to this building. Then you have no alternative to that service. So if you shut down that, it's not acceptable. That's not continuous operation. So we will ask for that ICU to brace from source to the ICU. So you still get level 1 because you're not bracing from source to radiology. You get level 1. So what I mentioned in the past, level 1 plus is kind of the approach here. But if there's no ICU, if there's only radiology, then yeah, sure, there's radiology here. Level 1 is acceptable. So we just move on. What if I have the same facility and I want to do level 1 on every single one of them? So what we started seeing, which we are pushing back, is, oh, this building will have the services somewhere else. This building has services somewhere else. This building has services somewhere else. This building will have services somewhere else. So the entire facility cannot be NPC 4D level 1. So you cannot just keep the services out of this building within the same campus. The argument that we keep seeing is, oh, we're going to shut down the facility. And there's another facility probably within, I don't know, X number of miles. Again, an evacuation is the last resort option, not a design target. So we are designing the facility to provide services after the earthquake. So therefore, all buildings in the facility cannot be NPC 4D level 1. Okay, what is the minimum number of elevators? So for level 2 and level 3, a minimum of 1 elevator. Again, this is a pretty basic requirement. So that hasn't changed. And the other question that we get quite often is, okay, I have a central utility plant. There's no inpatient services in it. So is that can I do level 1? So, which means that these equipment, for example, they will be anchored, but all the utilities above will not be anchored. So obviously the operational plan, it will say the entire facility will be shut down because the central utility plants are so critical of the facility. Not functioning central utility plant is basically detrimental. So rather than going back and forth many times on the operational plan, we are basically getting to the point saying that central utility plants as a standalone buildings need to be NPC 4. Means that please brace everything in those buildings. Again, the code doesn't say central utility plants has to be NPC 4, but the code says that your operational plan needs to ensure continuous functionality. So not bracing central utility plant defeats the purpose of operational plan. So again, cutting the chase, central utility plant needs to be NPC 4. Now, what about mechanical and electrical rooms that are like in a building, in a patient tower? So first of all, as engineer or architect, the design professional of record, you should be advising your client to absolutely anchor those, because without those, your functionality will go down. Not only that, I would also advise, by looking at the functions of those rooms, to brace the piping coming out of it. So again, those rooms, the pipe sizes get pretty small pretty quickly. So you will get into exempt category, I don't know, within yards of the equipment rooms. So anyway, something that should be brought up to the client so that they know what they are getting by bracing or not bracing these rooms. We are not requiring the whole patient tower to be NPC 4 because of an equipment room, but we want you to look at that surgically to make sure that those things are taken care of. So the patient tower may get NPC 4D level 1, 2, 3. But again, the emphasis should be there for mechanical and electrical rooms. Let's take a 5-minute break and then we'll continue. So let's be back 11:10. Thank you. All right, it's 11:10. I'm gonna continue. So similar to the previous slides about NPC for the level 1, 2, and 3, what about the tunnels that supply like utilities to conforming buildings? So typically tunnels and some of those utilities, we are asking the design professionals to look at the downstream effect on the operational plan. So tunnels are generally more easier to tackle because there are not many side disruptions for the pass-through utility systems, so that needs to be considered. Fire sprinklers. Presented this in previous webinars, but I'd like to touch on those because the Oshpot buildings, 1982 through 94-ish, most of the time, the only scope is fire sprinkler bracing upgrade. So the upgrade basically it's not just black and white between the codes, so there's some progression of requirements throughout the NFPA for the fire sprinklers. So we basically say, okay, if you know what version of NFPA that was upgraded, we can tailor the scope a little more efficiently. So the building, if it is 1994 NFPA, you are good. If you are 87, 89, 91 edition, then there's some either verification or upgrade needed. So generally the concern of these editions are the end of line restraints. In an earthquake, those fire sprinkler heads basically gets cut off and then it floods the whole hospital. So we want those to be secured. When you go back in the 87-ish, then you're gonna start seeing missing branch line bracing in addition to end of line restraints. So it's a little mixed bag, so don't assume the worst. So I would just say, please have your design professional look at several places in the building to come to a conclusion. Before 85 edition, generally an upgrade is most of the time required. Some other miscellaneous frequently asked questions. This comes up quite often, and especially now we are going into the construction document phase. Hospitals, they come and say, hey, we decided to fully renovate this area. So it's gonna be full gut, like floor to floor. So should I really go through the inventory of the things that I'm gonna demo it? So what's the point? And we agree. So in the evaluation report, cloud that area and say that full renovation will be done for all items. Then you do not have to basically include the list of those equipment in that area. But then, which means that now you need to submit a project by March 1st, 2026 for that renovation. And you need to get permit for that renovation, and you need to be done with that renovation by January 1st, 2030. So it's basically your quote unquote retrofit is through different projects. This is a pretty heavy slide, just bear with me. This talks about exceptions of NPC 3 and how it is applicable or not applicable to 4D level 1, 2, and 3 and NPC 4. So all I'm gonna get at here is there are some exceptions that will apply, there are some exceptions that don't apply. For example, NPC 3 doesn't look at cable trays, conduits, ducting, piping on several items. So when you are basically bracing under level 2, no, those are not exempt because you are trying to brace those conduits and things to make sure functionality is there. So you can't just take the NPC 3 exceptions and expect NPC 4D level 2 work. So anyways, it may get a little convoluted, but take a look at this slide. It talks about the nuances of exceptions. Now, this is again another big thing, flex joints. As as more buildings come to the inventory of a hospital, things get added, the utility pipes are extended to the next building, and then the next building, and then the next building. And during those changes in the campus, a lot of times what we started seeing is when the utilities are passing through the seismic joints, not all of them got flexible joints. So these things do allow movements between buildings. So bracing a pipe is much easier than cutting a pipe and putting a flex joint. So we came to a conclusion that it may not be practical to cut these pipes everywhere. It's just you need to shut down the hospital a lot of times. So in many scenarios that we have seen, it's just detrimental to the whole campus if you try to cut every single pipe to make sure that this is done. So this is generally feasible when we are converting to 1R and other occupancies. But when you look at the campus-wide, cutting everything is just not practical. So we came up with a survey required and not required, depending on the matrix of if you have a pre-OSA building next to a OSHPD 1R building, then the survey is required. If you have an OSHPD building right next to an OSHPD building, survey not required. So, but where the building does not meet this criteria, we want the design professional of record to state this sentence to make sure that the owner understands this consequence. Okay. The requirement for piping suspended by individual hangers. This comes again as a frequent asked question a lot. Again, the codes do change over over the years, so that's why it's, it gets thicker and thicker as the code years increase. So the exceptions do change. So people say, well, I like the exception in 2019 code, but I don't like it on the 2016 code, or vice versa. Can I do a mixed soup of exceptions throughout many code cycles? The answer is no. You need to stick with one code that you are applying and stay consistent with that code cycle. So people say, oh, I'm going to use 1998. 1998 do have exceptions, but it's not as detailed as the subsequent codes. So if you're going to choose 1998, you have to live with the uncertainty of those exceptions. If you use a more later code, then things get more clear, but some flexibilities on your hand may go away. So anyways, your design professional will decide which code cycle to pick and stick with that. The code says 1998 code or later codes. It's not a combination of. Another frequent asked question, 3R. So if you are one of the lucky facility who has a 3R building, which is something less than 3, it needs an upgrade to 3. Because the importance factor at that time was 1.0 rather than 1.5. So this question comes up quite often. We say, yes, we do want you to upgrade those. There are ways of, if you have a good documentation from that time, sometimes with the increased force, things checks out. Sometimes it doesn't. This is a repeat slide. Okay, a little process change. In the past, I don't know, 10 years ago, um, we were recommending to go step by step in the NPC upgrade process. Like, for example, if you are NPC 2, like try to get to 3, and then you can get to 4 or 4D, and then you just, progress the construction. Now, we don't have much time left. Like all the 4D evaluations are in, so we are on the path of 4 and 4D. So we are right now not quite entertaining the idea of let's do a step approach item. So if you're gonna submit an NPC 3, we are kind of kicking back saying that add your operational plan and then come back as 4D level 1, if not level 2, whatever. But just focusing on 3 right now is just a time loss on the facility side. So we just say, please go back and submit NPC for 4D and 5 applications. We are kind of running out of time. Another question is critical care areas. So people say, well, there is for example, a surgical service department. There are like staff locker rooms and nurse control offices. Where's my boundary of critical care area? Is it just that room? The answer is no. It's the department. So it's a surgical services department. The function is about how this service as a department goes. So the boundary that we are enforcing is the boundary of the department. So not just one room and then another room right next to it. Again, a lot of words here. What I want to point out is there was a slight revision in the 2022 code for testing for the existing anchors for the equipment. So we no longer require shear testing if there's no tension is in that anchor, and a little more clarification about how to test the existing anchors. So it became a little more palatable and flexible in terms of testing requirements. Okay, what if you have a building that, again, I mentioned this, that won't provide acute care services beyond 2030? What are the steps that you want to take? Maybe you already gave NPC for 4D report. So what are the options? Number one thing is, please submit an application with a letter of intent. It's just one-page letter from the facility saying that our intent is not to continue GAC services in this building beyond 2030. So you may say, well, then why are we putting a project if we're going to just send the letter? The thing is, the intent may change, the intent may evolve. So we want to keep track of all those things changes within a project number. So we, in the seismic compliance plan applications, we specifically added a line item for you to use, and it says intent to remove GAC. But once you do that, then again, we publish that building as intent to remove GAC, and we put you on a track to now with the expectation that you're going to be submitting construction drawings to start removing those services by March 2026 for the drawings, March 1st, 2028 for the permit issuance, and then finally finishing January 1st, 2030. With the AB 869, that construction final may change a little bit, but the deadlines pretty much remain the same. Now, I'd like to spend the next half an hour on our new advisory guide, A13. So we published this back in November, December last year. Since now we are going towards the construction side of things on the NPC, we came up with this an option for facility to consider to expedite the construction. Again, this 813 guide is not a magical solution. It's just an option. If it makes sense, we recommend you to use it. If it doesn't make sense, the traditional method may actually work better. So this guide is only for existing ceilings and above ceiling utilities. Again, the reason that we came up with this one is during the evaluations, a lot of times the design professional could not see or were not allowed to enter into several ceiling spaces, and the utility evaluation side of things were either missing or not complete. So going into those spaces many times, disrupting the operations were a huge issue for some buildings. So the question started coming, hey, is there a way that we only go to that space once and fix things? So this is kind of the idea behind that model. Okay. A lot of times it's easier to identify what type of equipment and furniture and contents is in the room, but not that easy when it comes to above ceiling, when the things are not seen, not visible. It's the drawings of equipment and contents are generally a whole lot more available than the pipe conduits and duct layouts. A lot of times the facility knows where it's coming from and where it's ending up with, but there's little, no, or bit wrong information about how it gets there. How does it travel from, and which rooms that it passes through. So those are a lot unknown. So again, because of unknown nature of the utilities, this 813 guide was designed. I'm going to emphasize this probably 10 more times. The guide is only and only for existing components and systems for NPC upgrade. This guide should not be used for new equipment or wall-mounted equipment, floor-mounted, new systems, or deferred submittals. So again, this flexibility is coming from the reason of not seeing what you need to brace beforehand. Deferred submittals are not permitted, and I'll come to that in more detail for 813 guide. And if you have a TI project, we want the TI project to follow the standard process, but that doesn't mean that you cannot use that room with the 813 guide. You can, and I'll tell you how. But make the TI project traditional, the NPC upgrade of utilities, its own project. Okay, the first question, should I use 813 guide for my building? How would I know that my building is a good candidate for 813 guide? The starting point is, how much do you know about the conditions in your building? That's the big question. So let your design professional look at all the existing drawings, details, site visits, gather as much information as possible, and have an understanding about what comfort level of details that you have on hand, on paper. If the survey is comprehensive and the DPOR says that, okay, this reasonably reflects existing conditions, not 100%, nothing is 100%, but reasonably, I think we know most things, then if that's the case, you don't need A13 guide. Go to our typical HCAI process, because if you know things, you know where to put the braces. This will be much faster, much budget friendly. If you don't know much above ceiling, and there are a lot of lack of documentation and lack of access, then I recommend to use A13 process. So again, there's a trade-off. A13 process requires more design professional and HCAI involvement, but less contractor and disruption time. So you gotta weigh the pros and cons on that. Okay, so I know this is a long flow chart, but this is the only way to explain, in one run, this whole A13 guide. And after I go through this flow chart, I think the other slides should go it should make more sense. So let's see how the river flows. So we start with the existing drawings. So prepare as much as you can, gather as much information as you can, put it on the drawing. So everything that you put beforehand will save you time and money. So while doing that, the DPOR should really visit the building. Prepare the typical details as much as they can to get the right details. For example, we don't want to see typical details, um, concrete typical details for a wood building. So don't throw unnecessary typical details just to put everything in it. So it has to be building specific. It has to be the site specific. If it is a high seismic zone, obviously the bracing recommendations will be different than a low seismic zone. So building specific is key, but we are not expecting you to know all the layouts. It's just you need to observe few locations to make sure that you are in the ballpark of things. And quite honestly, I was on the other side too for many years. When you pop a ceiling tile, you start seeing some patterns of past projects or past things that were done. So you can start getting, okay, I can use my company's typical details here and there, so I can throw this and this. So you can get ready pretty well if you can observe some specific locations. With that, still you don't have the layout of the pipes and conduits and ducts. So you only know what types are there, but you don't know the extent. Now, this is where you start splitting the scope area into several areas. This is a conversation with the facility, with the contractor, how we should split the areas to attack. So you put those in your TIO, so as a milestones. Okay, so I'm gonna do the radiology department first, or I'm gonna start with the patient rooms on the east, and whatever. So whatever makes sense to make sure that you have the minimal disruption in phases. So this is again a strategy. Again, at this point, you may have some layout drawings, but not complete. So with the typical details, and those typical details can be a lot of OPMs and a lot of building specific details that the engineer or design professional put together, and you're gonna send it to the HCAI region for approval and permit. So then the region will say, well, you don't know the construction costs because you don't even know how many that you're gonna put in. So they're gonna most likely set the project as time and material. So it's an hourly fee. And after the permit, you will have your kickoff meeting. But after that, the first big one is the milestone number 1, which is the on-site first assessment. So contractor, IOR, HCAI staff, they all go into the first area where all the ceilings are opened. So the pipes and conduits, everything is visible, and the design professional is basically saying that, okay, so whatever we are seeing under this in this area, we put almost like as-built drawing, and here are the places that we're going to be putting our braces, and we're going to be using the details on the drawings. Okay, so basically there will be feedback from our HCAI staff about the expectations, and we will be asking taking lots of photos, maintaining the records of the DPOR. So update the bracing layout plan, aka as built, and move on. Now, after that, the braces are installed, inspected as usual, closed down. Now you go to the next area. Let's say the other half of the radiology department, let's say. Then the design professional, when the contractor prepares that space, well, okay, maybe there's a new condition that came up that wasn't there in the first milestone. Then your option is bring details from the OPM that was agreed on. If you bring the details from the OPM only, again, new details, but from OPM, we will consider that as NMA. Now, this is the core difference between our traditional approach versus a 13 guide approach, is this aspect. The bringing new OPM details is not going to be considered as ACD. It's going to be NMA. So your HCAI staff may or may not be there in that step. So as design professional of record, they will make a decision, they will sign, stamp, update the bracing layout plans, and basically move on to the next area. So there's some reporting requirement that we want the design professional to alert that, you know, things are happening, this is what's happening, but we want you to continue. So after you update all the bracing layout plans, take lots of pictures. You cannot take enough number of pictures, so take every angle, every resolution that you can get, because it will come handy later. So you close the ceiling, move on to the next area. Now you're on the next milestone. Let's say now you are on the ICU department. So actually let's stay with the radiology department. You're done with the radiology department, and let's say that's your milestone number 3. The HCAI staff, they're gonna sign off from your at your each milestone. While signing off, initially they will spot check your decisions. So remember the second place where you went on the radiology department, that you only maybe put a couple of details and maybe not brace other things. They're gonna just open it and see, okay, I concur with that decision. Or if they don't concur, you have a discussion about why you end up with that decision. So our guess is early on there will be a lot of discussions, but towards
the middle and end of the project, the discussions should basically die down quite a bit, because once there's a good understanding between the design professional, contractor, and HCAI staff, and as long as you use the OPM details, things should go quicker. And as you go to the next project, or maybe with the same team, then things should go much faster. So this should accelerate over time with the understanding of the process between all parties. So again, you go to the next milestone, finish all the work. Now, as you go through all the milestones and having some conversations with HCAI staff, you're gonna keep updating the bracing layout plans. Again, we are not saying that HCAI staff will be there every milestone. No. In the first milestone, and maybe in maybe 1 or 2 milestones, maybe throughout the project to sign off and do spot checks. That will be the regular visits for whatever the needs are. But in terms of spot checking, it's not going to be every step of the way. So as you develop and update the bracing layout plans, you're going to come to the conclusion of the project. So now you have a full set of final bracing layouts. At that point, we concurred with the direction. So when you are done, we want you to submit that layout plan to the region project. We will not be reviewing that bracing layout plans because we already agreed on it. So it's just we want you to upload that as the final document, and then it's gonna go to construction final. We will not give you construction final before you update the final bracing layout plan. Again, this plan is pretty much daily updated over the course of the project. This is not something that you do right before construction final. So that's super important. After you do construction final, that scope is done. And if you have multiple of these projects, you're gonna just reconcile all of those and update the NPC report to get your rating. So this is kind of in a nutshell of the A13 guide. Now I'm gonna go into some details of the A13 guide. Hopefully it made sense. Oh, one thing that I forgot to mention early on, so let me go back a few slides. You're gonna see a version number at the bottom of A13 guide. So we published initially on November, and our latest version should go out today, if not tomorrow morning. So it's gonna show a new version number. So please download it tomorrow and see. We made some changes in the A13 guide, not big changes, but a lot of clarifications. And in the future, we want to do 3.0. We want to include some examples as we go through these A13 guide. So it's a dynamic guide where we are hoping to give more examples, more visuals, so that it becomes more usable. The fundamental process remains the same, hopefully, so that we make these NPC projects a success. Okay. With that, let's talk about some details of A13 guide. What about using more than one OPM? Yes, you can use more than one OPM because most likely your building is a soup of OPMs and other stuff. So you want to be a bit nimble on what OPM details that you want to pull from the typical OPM details. So it's acceptable as long as you do your little study about what kind of existing conditions are there so that you bring the right OPM details early on as much as possible. you can't just point to OPM and call it, oh, we're gonna just be installing this. No, you need to show the details on the drawings, the ones that you are going to construct. So just pointing to OPM is not acceptable. And this has been the case for, this is nothing new. Now, architectural floor plan, when you are starting on the bracing layout plans, you need to show the room functions so that we know where you are upgrading. So just please don't give us a list and expect us to know, where these layout plans are. So you need to show the room functions, and define boundaries of where this work is happening. Again, application is time and materials, because you don't have a construction cost. TIO forms, again, it's important to put the milestones in the TIO form. So this is your, this is design professional records document. So please do not let IORs or contractors run your TIO. TIO is design professionals document, and this is super important. Again, pre-construction meeting, communication. Communication is key on A13 guide. Don't assume things. Pick up the phone. If there is any issue, talk to us. If there's a misunderstanding, again, bringing it early on will save a lot of time. Now, again, let's say you start with A13 guide, right? And you are going through the TIO process, and if you see that things are not working out, there are some issues with dealing with existing conditions, or there's just too many cases where OPM just doesn't cut it. Like every single time, if you find yourself that you are sketching a new outside of the norm details, that's time to leave A13 guide process and just continue with our traditional process. So there's nothing wrong switching to the traditional route if things are getting really, really detail intensive. So anyways, it's just you have a chance to switch. Because all those new details are not NMAs, that becomes ACD. So when it becomes a lot of ACDs, then it kind of defeats the purpose. So it's time to move to the traditional approach. Okay, TIO, it's the business as usual for TIO. Again, I want to emphasize photographs. Photographs are key, because when a question comes later, you can just pull up the photograph and show this is what we have, what we saw. So a lot of times those may save you to reopen that or disrupt that space. The one little caution, when you take a photo up close, nobody knows what you are looking at, or how thick is that one, or how long is the pipe. So there's nothing that replaces just human eye. So there are some limitations on photographs. When you take a photograph, don't expect that everybody understands what we are looking at. So anyway, it's just a word of caution. Site verification, again, we will be relying a whole lot more on the design professional records, keeping track, processing, communicating, the site verification, the dynamic nature of existing conditions. So we will be relying on them a lot. So the decisions that will be done on the spot when you open it the decisions has to be made by the licensed professional. So again, do not let the contractor make the decisions for you. So this is very important. So when a condition is revealed by the contractor saying that, hey, this is what I'm seeing, what should I do? The licensed professional will say, okay, put this brace using this detail and let's put it on the bracing layout. So licensed professionals are not a review entity of contractors' decisions. They are the decision makers. So the braces that are added during construction, again, should be laid out on the drawings with accurate locations identified by the DPOR. So when our field staff asks the current bracing layout plans, it's like a daily report. So we are expecting that that is available. And if a photograph question asked, it should be shown to our field staff. So keeping a good record and accessible is very important. Okay, I mentioned these a couple times. So the existing utility lines, when we say, please show those, we put some nuances on, how much is too much on the, how much is too much for, like, do we show every little single pipe? So take a look at the 813 guide. We put some nuances on how to show, how much to show, so that, you don't put every single little thing. So again, keep a good track of what's going on, what's being braced, what is included in the area and what is not included in the outside of the area. Please be very clear. And let's say you showed all of these and later you start changing your mind, or maybe the later on a milestone, the HCAI review revealed a lot of discrepancies. We may ask to go back and look at it, and if things are missed a lot, then there we go. Then there might be some destructive investigation to reopen some space, ceiling spaces. In order to prevent this, again, continuous good communication with good record keeping should prevent the destructive investigation. Again, with existing drawings, without existing drawings, there's obviously a little more work that needs to be done when you don't have existing drawings. Again, we are relying a lot on the DPOR to make those calls. I mentioned this in the flow chart. ACD versus NMA. Again, this is the heart of the 813 guide. It's important to understand what we call NMA versus what we call ACD. So OPMs are your friends. So this whole 813 guide do accelerate if you stay within the boundaries of OPMs. If you're outside of it a lot, then maybe this may not be as quick or as time-saving as you may think. Okay, there are some other little details about NMA versus ACD. Again, please take a look at the 813 guide. It gives a little details about how to approach an ACD versus NMA. Final closeout. again, it's important to wrap up the bracing layout plans, show all the boundaries clearly, submit that PDF to the original project, and please state that to our field staff so that they check that off, saying that, yep, that's submitted under that project condition. We are not asking you to upload the photographs. So, because the photographs will be, I don't know, terabytes of data. So we are asking the facility to keep the photographs till you get the NPC5 rating itself. So which might be several years down the road, because if anything that may come up later on, like what about this area, what about that area, photographs will be very helpful. So again, the photographs should be available during the construction, and should be kept like a how to say, like a record drawing, like when you kept your record drawings in a hard drive. Please do keep those photographs as your almost like a construction document till you get NPC5. After you get your NPC5, I still recommend to keep them because it's valuable, but seismic compliance unit will not ask further information about those. And after everything is done, please visit or go back to the SRU evaluation project that you initially submitted. Remember all those summary tables. Do update those summary tables saying that, yep, this portion of the summary table we upgraded using this project. So the reconciliation should wrap everything up on those deficiency list. And then if everything checks out, submit those reports to seismic compliance, and we will take a quick look at if there are any gaps. And if there are no gaps, then we will give the rating. So again, the whole idea here is fewer disruptions with the 813 guide. And the DPR are more in control, and reduced number of ACDs and NMAs. And I want to close with the TI project item, which we talk about in 813 guide. When you have an equipment upgrade in a room, keep that project separate than the 813 guide NPC upgrade of the utilities. It doesn't mean that you cannot go in the same space at the same time. You are just keeping track of things in two different projects. So we don't want you to use 813 guide just for one room or two rooms. So make it a building-wide project so that you keep track of all those things, because those pipes and conduits, it just goes everywhere. So so the idea here is having a good tracking tool with the with what's upgraded and what's not upgraded. With that, thank you so much. We are 11:59. Please send the questions to seismic compliance unit at hcai.ca.gov. Kelly?
This brings us to the end of our presentation. We hope you found this webinar to be helpful. Please remember, if you didn't download the PDF handout, you may do so now by going to the handout section of the GoTo panel. Alternatively, the slide handout will be available on the HCAI website in approximately 1 week. Also, today's session has been recorded and will be available on the HCAI website in approximately 2 weeks' time. If you have any questions about this presentation, please email Seismic Compliance Unit at hcai.ca.gov. It's been a pleasure being with you all today, and thank you for doing your part in providing access to safe, quality healthcare environments throughout the state of California. Have a nice day.